Merry Meet. Thank you so much for joining with me today. Today we are working a psalm spell, and today's psalm is Psalm 17. And traditionally we use that to cause any ill will that is sent towards you to be diverted. So this can be if you feel like you're on a hexed or crossed condition, or if you're just around bad negative energy, this will help you to get that negative energy diverted so that it doesn't bother you. Okay, so any negative energy, you can use this as a means to dispel that. So it's wonderful. And the way that we work these spells is very simple. We just take the psalm and we read it out loud all the way through once without stopping. We call this an incantation. And then to work the magic, we go back through that same psalm that we just incanted, and we mine for hidden meanings. We dig and find little seeds of wisdom that are living in the psalm. And it's that digging and searching and seeking and finding and contemplating that is the magic, because doing that plants those seeds deep in our mind. And those are real seeds. They really do work. So those seeds, they take root and they grow and they bear fruit after their kind. Now, this isn't something superstitious where you say some magic words and something appears in a puff of smoke. This is a deep reconditioning of your mind. And so you're reconditioning your deep mind, and that's called the causal plane. And so you're changing things at the causal plane, and that's why things will work out for you on the physical plane, because you've done this work. Okay, so let's do that together. So here we go with Psalm number 17. Hear the right, O Lord, attend unto my cry, give ear unto my prayer that goeth not out of feigned lips. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. Thou hast proved mine heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Thou hast tried me, and shalt find nothing. I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Concerning the works of men, by the word of thy lips I have kept me from the paths of the destroyer. Hold up my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me. O God, incline thy ear unto me, and hear my speech. Show thy marvelous loving kindness, O thou that savest by the right hand them which put their trust in thee from those that rise up against them. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings. From the wickedness that oppresses me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. They are enclosed in their own fat. With the mouth they speak proudly. They now have compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. Like as a lion that is greedy of his prey, and as it were a young lion lurking in the secret places. Arise, O Lord, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is my sword. From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from the men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. They are full of children, and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. All right, so now we'll just take this psalm and we will work the magic. So here we go. Okay, so it says, hear the right, O Lord, attend unto my cry, give ear unto my prayer that goeth not out of feigned lips. So hear the right, O Lord, hear the right. So you can look at that in so many ways, but you're telling God that which, and when we say God, first of all, who are we addressing? We're not addressing a deity. Get that out of your mind. We are not addressing some sort of father figure in the sky. This is not a deity that's separate and distinct from us. This is something that out of which we are created, from whom we are created. This is the actual source of our breathing, of our heartbeat, of every aspect of our lives. This is the one source, the one substance, the one force of the universe. There is only one, and there is no opposition, so there's nothing to oppose it. So it cannot be opposed. There's nothing to thwart it, so it is all power. It's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. It is all. Okay, so that's who we're talking to. So hear the right, O Lord. And again, that's not a male deity either. This just happens to be how it's described in this book. It's pre-gender. Hear the right. So the right, so hear me as I'm speaking my righteousness. See, hear me as I'm speaking truth. Hear me. Hear the right that I'm speaking. Attend unto my cry. So when you're crying out to the Lord, cry is again, they talk about these sorts of things in the Psalms all the time. It's a disturbance. It's a way of disturbing what's happening. You're creating a disturbance in the air to give ear unto my prayer that goeth out not out of feigned lips. Okay, so we're asking God to listen to us because we're telling the truth. We are righteous. We know exactly what we're talking about. And we're doing that for our benefit, not God's, because God doesn't stop listening to us. God's never stopped listening to it. God knew we needed this before we needed this. So all this we're doing for our own benefit. God doesn't need to be instructed. God, we don't have to change God's mind about us. We don't have to do anything to change God. We are doing these operations to change us so that we can accept the blessings that are already bestowed upon us. Let my sentence come forth from my presence. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. Okay, so the presence of God, where is the presence of God? Everywhere. Everywhere is the presence of God. So your existence comes from the presence of God. Your everything comes from the presence of God. And if you're not recognizing the presence of God, then you're recognizing that something that's separate from God, and we've discovered that something separate from God can't exist. So when you're experiencing something that's separate from God, you're experiencing something within the realm of a hallucination or a dream or a fantasy, something that you're concocting. It's called a vain imagining. So let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. So God's eyes understand that God's eyes only see the truth. God's eyes see everything clearly. God's eyes see things evenly, equally, justly. There's only justice in God's eyes. So when we are asking for the things that says to let thine eyes behold the things that are equal, God's eyes behold nothing less than that. So we want to see things as God sees them is ultimately what we're asking in this. We're not telling God how to see things, but we are recognizing that the way God sees things is very different than the way we see things, especially if we're in trouble. So we want God's eyes to show us to see like God sees. And we see things with a different set of eyes than our physical eyes when we do that. Okay. Thou hast proved mine heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Okay, first, thou hast proved mine heart. So when you prove something, there's a couple ways of proving something. To prove something is to give evidence, to support it. In a court of law, you can't get proof unless there's evidence, and then that evidence, if it's presented properly, it will be irrefutable, and then you'll see the proof either of innocence or guilt or whatever you're trying to figure out. Well, God's proving your heart. God's proving to you that God put God's self in your heart, that in your heart, and your heart means your soul. It means the reality of you, behind all of your personality, behind all your mistakes, behind all your nonsense. God's will exists in your heart. God created you to be the way you are. God created you in as perfectly as possible. There's no possibility of anything less than perfection within your heart, because God doesn't create imperfections. How could perfection create anything less than perfect? So, thou hast proved mine heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Okay, so God visits you in the night, meaning when you can't see straight, when you can't see clearly, when you don't know that everything's going to be okay, when you are worried about things, when you are afraid of things, that's when God will visit you in the night, even when you can't see clearly, even when you have to so-called fly on instruments because you can't see what's in front of you. That's when you fly, that's when you lean on your faith, and God visits you during those times. Now again, God never stopped visiting you. God never went away and then came back, but we are recognizing God's presence in the night, because that's when we need that presence even more. Thou hast tried me and shall find nothing. So God doesn't try us, meaning God doesn't test us, but God's vision is pure, so God only sees the truth. So when God looks into our hearts, God knows what God put there, and that's truth. Anything that's not like what God put in there, God does not see, because it doesn't really exist. So God's sight shines away everything that is unlike how we are supposed to be. I am purposed in my mouth. Okay. I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. Now that's up to you. So God's purpose for you is to have your words reflect the truth. Now that's up to you. If you start speaking things that are not of truth, if you start using your words unwisely, then you get those results. You get to have the results of living in a nightmare. Because you're using your words, and your words don't only mean physical voice; they also mean the way that you create thoughts, the thoughts that you come up with. If you've decided to think things separate from God, then you're going to have experiences that are separate from God. Concerning the works, and it says that my mouth shall not transgress. So you're making that vow to yourself that you're not going to do that you're not going to start thinking of things other than God. Concerning the works of men, by the word of thy lips I have kept me from the paths of the destroyer. So your own words have the power to succeed or to fail. That's what that line in the Bible means. By your words are you saved, and by your words are you condemned. All power of life and death is in the tongue. It's what you decide to do with your creative power is everything. Hold up my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. So that's a very powerful thing. Hold me up so I don't make mistakes. I'm going to ask. I'm going to come to you every time. I'm going to ask first. I'm going to ask for guidance first, and then I'm going to take action. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me. O God, incline thine ear to me and hear my speech. The nature of God is responsiveness. That is what his nature is. When I say his just because of language, but that's God's nature, is responsiveness. So it doesn't matter if you call upon it as goddess or God or power or whatever. It will respond to you. Show thy marvelous loving kindness. Thou shalt savest by thy right hand them which put their trust in thee from those that rise up against them. So you don't have to worry about people sending you negativity. You don't have to worry about people gossiping about you. You don't have to worry that people say negative things about you. You don't have to worry that people don't like you. You don't have to worry about what other people think about you. You don't have to worry about any of that. Why? Because God's loving kindness saves you. The right hand of God saves you because you put your trust in God. That's the only thing to put your trust in, because it's the only power that there really is. So practicing the presence of this power every day, multiple times during the day, what that does is it puts you on the beam of your soul, of your purpose here, of what you're supposed to be doing here. And all that other stuff that you were so worried about fades away into nothing. You are saved from all of that because it doesn't have any effect on you. It doesn't even touch you. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings. Well, that's it. God loves you. You're God's beloved child. Of course, God protects you. God protects you 100%. And that's a beautiful image to know that God's protecting you like a mother hen protects their chicks. I'm going to just completely cover you. I'm going to completely protect you. Nothing can hurt you. I promise you're safe. Feeling that protection is a wonderful thing, and it's a real thing. From the wicked that opposes me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. Yeah. So you take all of that stuff, all of those problems that you're having, all those conflicts within yourself and with other people, and you bring that straight to the source. And you don't sit and machinate and go over it and over it and over it. That's when you get into trouble. Instead of that, you take all of that stuff and you give it to this power, and you come into that feeling of being protected, being loved, being helped. right? And being here to do God's work rather than, we're worrying about what's going on from other people toward you. It doesn't matter how it's manifesting either. It can be a really, really bad thing that's happening to you. It doesn't matter. God doesn't know difficulty. There's no difficulty. It's not like you stubbing your toe or you getting cancer is more difficult to God. Right? And the same thing is true for whether you just had a fight with your boyfriend or whether somebody is, lying about you in court. It doesn't matter. God can take care of all of it. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth, they speak proudly. Now, this is talking about maybe other people, right? But ultimately, it's talking about you because you wouldn't even be getting involved with people like that if you didn't have a counterpart of that in your own mind. The astral equivalent must exist before it can exist in the world. So on some level, somewhere, you have that ability to have those problems yourself. So they are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth, they speak proudly. So watch your words and watch your thoughts. Don't get puffed up about yourself. Don't get puffed up about your problems, even. That's a way people get really puffed up and arrogant. Oh, look at all these problems. Oh, you should hear about my problems and my thing. And oh, you don't know what pain is. You should hear about my pain. You don't know how bad people are because look at these horrible enemies that I have. My enemies are so bad. You know what I'm saying? Don't do that. Don't be proud of your problems, and don't think that just because you give it the patina of humility that you're not being arrogant, because anything other than thinking of God is arrogance. Okay? They now have compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. Okay, so this is again, these negative thought forms within you are there first before the negative people are there. So we want to focus on those, because if we focus on the negative thought forms within your mind, those other people will fall away of their own weight, just as these thought forms do, because they can't be there unless there's an astral equivalent. So those thought forms have compassed us in our steps, and they have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. So this is all of those thought forms that only care about the physical occurrences in your life. They care about what you can get, about money. They care about prestige. They care about your protecting the body. They care about your possessions. They care about winning arguments. They care about being right. They care about these thought forms care about everything that is focused on this earth. That's what I mean. Their eyes are bowed down to they have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. So they've set their eyes. You're only looking at one thing. You don't want to hear about anything else. You don't want to know about anything other than this. You know you're right, and you are so focused on the earth. You are worshiping the earth. You are not worshiping the earth in the good way, like the goddess of the earth. You are worshiping the manifest reality rather than the power behind it. And you're very and if you were doing that, then that tendency is very immovable, and then it doesn't. There's no big mystery why you come into conflict with other people. When you come into conflict with other people, it may be a wonderful catalyst for you to turn and do one of these psalm spells. But ultimately, what that is that you need to recognize, wait a minute, how did I come into such big conflict with this person if I didn't have a mental equivalent first, if I didn't have an astral equivalent first? So I need to find those thought forms in my mind that bring these things about. And that's what we're doing with this psalm. Like as a lion that is greedy of his prey, and as it were a young lion lurking in secret places. So the lion is greedy of his prey. These are your thought forms that all they care about is satisfying their desires, their lusts, their hunger. They're greedy. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. If these thought forms don't go unchecked, then of course they are going to call forth experiences with that mirror them. And those kinds of experiences, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, always believe that there's limited resources. So of course you're going to have people that are going to fight against you because they don't want you to succeed, because they also are on that same wavelength that you are broadcasting, that there's only so much to go around and you can't succeed because then I will fail. I can only succeed if I make sure that you fail. Those are those kinds of thought forms that we are now annihilating. And then you won't even bring those kinds of relationships into your experience anymore. And then it says, the young lion lurking in secret places. This stuff is so hidden. We are so good at playing the shell game with ourselves, at believing, no, I don't feel that way. It's just, meh. We're so good at displacing things in our mind and pretending like it doesn't exist and just like turning it off and going, la, 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 la. I don't believe that. I don't think that. And you dig these seeds deep down into your mind because you don't want to look at the kinds of thoughts that you think. And then they have no choice but to take root and bear fruit after their own kind. And then it just seems like it comes out of nowhere. And that's that secret lion lurking, that lion lurking in secret places. Why is that lion lurking in secret places? Because you hid him there. Okay, so we're getting rid of all that stuff. From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. Okay, so now, if God is hiding his treasure, where does God hide his treasure? In your heart, in your soul. So you don't have to go looking outside of yourself to find this treasure. You look within yourself to find this treasure. That's where God hides. That's where all occult wisdom is. Hidden is occult. So if it's occult and it comes from God, that occult wisdom is within your heart. That's where you find it. Now, if it's the wrong kind of occult, that's the stuff that you've hidden. Those are your secrets that are not sacred secrets. Those are the hidden lions, the lions in hidden places. That's the wrong kind of occultism. Occultism that you come up with on your own, that all that means is the places that you have dissociated, that you have stuffed these negative thought forms because you don't want to look at them and you don't want to take responsibility for them. And you want to play the game of, I'm such a victim here. Okay? And this is getting rid of that tendency. They are full of children, and they leave the rest of their substance to their babies. Okay, to their babes. Okay, so on one hand, we want that. On one hand, we want the substance of God to be left for the children of our thought forms. But on the other hand, what we don't want is that substance of our thought forms left to the children of those other thought forms, the negative thought forms, the ones that are trying to separate themselves from God, because then they run amok. Okay, so we want to turn our entire mind, our entire heart over to the care of God so that we can be filled with that wisdom and shine away all of those old tendencies. And this is not an abdication of power when you do that. It's the opposite. It is the time when you finally come into your power. It's not like you're giving up your free will. It is the best use of your free will. Because nobody's going to force you to do this. This comes from your free will. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. And that's everything right there. You can memorize that and just say that to yourself, especially if you're feeling vulnerable. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. So you're going to find God's face. What's the face of God? It's not a nose and eyes and mouth. Face of something means the nature. How can you recognize someone? You recognize them by their face. So you know how to recognize God when you think of the qualities of God. So you'll think of God as infinite love. You'll think of God as the life principle that's beating your heart. You'll think of God as your soul that you were given, which is like a sunbeam to the sun, which is an extension of God. You'll think of God as pure spirit, that which cannot be destroyed, that there's nothing to fear. You'll think of God as infinite intelligence. That intelligence that guides the planets on their courses, that can create babies out of embryos and seeds turning into flowers. You'll think of God as infinite truth, that truth which shines away all lies. That means that there's nothing but freedom available for you when that truth is revealed to you. You'll think of God as nothing but pure, unadulterated principle, that 2 + 2 will always equal 4, and that God's laws are immutable, and that you are under no laws but God's. Okay, so you're not captive. You can't be held captive, but that's going to be because you've decided that you're holding that you're beholding God's face in righteousness, that you're doing it quite literally. You shall be satisfied when you awake. So to look at God's face and think of these qualities, that wakes you up from the dream that you're vulnerable. It wakes you up from the dream that you have poverty. It wakes you up from the dream that you have resentments and grievances, right? That you're no longer in that world. You're in a new world. That's when you awake. With thy likeness. You are God's likeness. You are God's likeness. That's your soul. Now, if you're not expressing yourself as God's likeness, it means that you're trying to do things separate from God. You're trying to be unnatural. You're trying to be something other than who you are. And Psalms like this lift you out of those tendencies so that you can make new choices and that you can plant these seeds deep within your mind so that you can have real results. And in this case, you're going to notice that all of those problems that you're having from other people start to fade away like they were never even there. And that's the beauty of working a psalm like this. Keep coming back to this psalm again and again until you notice that you are completely free of this condition. I'm so happy to work with you, and I cannot wait to work with you again. And until that time, blessed be.